Welcome to episode 8 of Relentless Endeavor's Let's Talk podcast to get the generations talking. I am Sherry Thompson, Director of Relentless Endeavor, representing the Boomer and Gen X generations. And with me is Peter Thompson from the Millennial generation. And yes, there is a family connection there. Our hope is that through these discussions, you will not only learn about different generations, but you'll also find talking points to get your own discussion started with those that you know from a different generation. So tonight, in honor of it being December, we are going to talk about traditions. So most of you have already celebrated Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about some Christmas traditions and the importance of those. So let's just start off. I want to ask Peter, I've made a list here too of some of my traditions, but I'm interested, Peter, of what were some of your favorite holiday traditions growing up, and why were they important to you?
Starting with Thanksgiving, it wasn't really a tradition for me. I think it was more for you and Jess. Watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I slept through it most of the time.
Yes, you did.
By the time I got down there, it was like the B and C list celebrities that were like fake playing guitar on the floats of like the C tier motor oil company or whatever. So like I didn't see most of it, but I always remember coming down and I was always on.
Certainly in time for breakfast.
Well, not even half the time. After a while there, I was eating cold eggs for breakfast because it had been so long, because you were like, oh, it's a holiday, let him sleep in. And 10:30 a.m. rolls around and there's Peter finally.
That's true. That's true.
I guess another Thanksgiving one would be that like anybody was welcome. We always had a different mix of people every year, just depending on who was in town and how much you felt like cooking.
Right.
I know that sometimes you were like, I don't have it in me to cook much. We're just going to have family. And then sometimes the family would just not, they would have their own plans, so they wouldn't come, and it would be just a couple of people. And then other times it would be like, wow, okay. I guess we're not going to have many leftovers this year because the number of people that showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember you always cooked like everything, but it was Dad's job to take the turkey apart so that, he would like make a plate of turkey to pass around. And then at some point he would go back in and start doing it all over again. Then he was tearing apart the turkey and starting to do dishes and stuff while everyone else was kind of hanging out. I vaguely remember like football games being on in the downstairs family room. Not from any particular like love of football. It's just like that's just what was on. Like it was easy to like kind of come in and come out and not worry about keeping up with like a movie plot or anything like that. It was just easy to have on.
Well, yeah, and that also depended on whether a college team that I was supporting was playing in a bowl game. So
there is that. Bowl games. Yeah. I remember hearing a lot about those growing up, and I just haven't even paid attention at all this year. What about like, I guess those aren't necessarily like intentional traditions for Thanksgiving, but I think they just eventually became traditions because it's what we wanted to do at the time.
I think so. And, I think I carried on that tradition because I grew up watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with my parents. So that was just something I continued doing with you guys. I had some of the same things listed for my traditions with the Macy's Day Parade. It's kind of when we started watching Christmas movies. We really didn't do much Christmas before Thanksgiving. And then for a while there, for a long time, when you guys were like older elementary through, like when you moved out even, we would go down to watch the Plaza Lights come on. If the weather was good, we didn't have any need to stand in the rain and all that, but we used to go down to Community Christian Church and get our cookies and hot cider and go stand on the balcony and watch the Plaza Lights come on. And we did that for a lot of years. So that was always a fun tradition for us, for me. For all of us, I think that was fun. So now we don't we don't do that. Your dad and I sneak out to see the 2 a.m. test of the lights.
Did you do that this year?
On Wednesday morning. It's Wednesday morning. So yes, we are going.
Okay.
And your dad has decided to take Wednesday off now because it's too hard to be up between 2 and 4 in the middle of the night and then get up and go to work. So,
oh man,
they're actually at 2 a.m. So we'll get up about 1:15 and head down there. Get back about 3. So
he must love you.
He totally does.
He goes to bed at like 10.
Yes. Oh, he's getting earlier and earlier, but yes. And the fact that he can take that next day off is a little bit better. But it's really become a really fun tradition for the two of us. So, okay.
Fun.
So yeah. What about some of your favorite Christmas traditions?
Not so much mine. I remember there were always specific movies we watched each year. Mr. Willoughby's Christmas Tree.
Oh yeah.
The Winnie the Pooh Christmas movie. It was like a 2-parter. So like the first part was like a 15-minute story about Christmas, and the second part was about the magic ice skates, which wasn't really Christmas, but it's still wintry.
I think you guys could probably quote most of those.
Oh, probably. We watched them a ton. Yeah, Mr. Willoughby's Christmas Tree was the one I was kind of mainly thinking of. Growing up, I remember like Dad would always get the Sunday paper, and that was like his one thing that was like his first out of anything else in the house. He's like, no, I get to go through the paper first. But that was when all the like advertisements and big catalogs and stuff for Christmas would come out, was in the Sunday paper.
That's true.
You know, before online shopping took over everything. So, I would say circling things in like the Sunday advertisements and the catalogs and stuff, like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want that, you know. We didn't really do like Christmas lists so much. There were a couple of years we like wrote things down in like a notebook or whatever. For me, it was when there were like a bunch of like specific Lego sets that I wanted. So I would like write them down with the item number and all that sort of stuff. Most of the time, what I remember is just like circling things in the Sunday newspaper ads. And then you guys could literally just go through and go, okay, well, at Target, Peter wants this and this and this and that. You know, like it was just, the idea was to make it easy. Oh
yeah, you guys gave us plenty to choose from.
Yeah. And I think, you know, part of it was just a variety of mixed interests. And I think part of it was just like, we knew that we weren't going to get everything, because there was just no way we were going to get everything that we circled. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen. But I think in us circling a lot of those different things, it helped you kind of get the vibe of what we were looking for.
Oh, sure.
And then you were able to go based on that. Because, you know, when we were growing up, you weren't ever away from us. So like,
I know,
you had to like go in and get it like, okay, I'm going to go Christmas shopping. Dad's got you guys for an hour, and you could like run over to Target, and you just had to go with what was left in the Lego aisle for me, depending on how far out you were able to buy stuff. So I think it was probably nice that we were like, no, literally any of this stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
Rather than like, I want this one specific thing. Oh, they don't have it. Oh no, my Christmas is ruined. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You guys were never really like that. You had, like you said, Legos, and so there were lots of different varieties. Or when you were little, you liked the Thomas the Tank Engine stuff. So anything related to that was fine.
Yeah. I remember another tradition was like, we called it sleeping under the Christmas tree. Basically sleep by the light of the Christmas tree, on the couch, on an air mattress, whatever. We would, you know, fall asleep down there. Not on Christmas Eve. It was like typically after Christmas, I think we did that.
A lot of times it was, and a lot of times we did it more than one night.
Yeah. So those things, and then it wasn't so much tradition, just like the vibe, you know, tail end of the shopping mall era. So decorations in all the stores, Christmas lights everywhere. Not that we went to the mall necessarily, but like all the stores would have all these crazy vinyl decals in the windows. So if we were running into Target to grab cat litter, we were seeing all the Christmas stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of that personality is kind of gone. So it feels like one of those traditions that slipped away rather than we like intentionally got rid of, because you just don't have the same vibes anymore necessarily.
Well, so much shopping's done online that you don't do all the day long shopping kinds of things. Yeah.
Oh yeah. My TikTok shopping cart is just full of things for other people right now.
There you go. Yeah, I really loved the sleeping under the tree. And that was, I can remember getting just like every blanket that we had and pillows and the air mattresses, and we basically made a nest out of the living room floor, and books and snacks, and we would read or watch movies, and then the only thing on in the whole room was the Christmas tree lights, and we would sleep with those. And that was a lot of fun. I really loved that, and I still do that. Actually, I don't call it. I mean, your dad and I call it sleeping under the tree, but I will literally sleep on the couch in the room with the Christmas tree lights on. Even though you guys aren't there anymore, I'm still doing that because I still just love that. I do actually probably get up in the middle of the night at some point and slam the lights off because it's like I gotta have dark. But I still love that tradition, even for myself. And I remember we used to take you guys driving around looking at lights. We'd go get a hot chocolate or coffee or make it at home, and then get in the car and all pile up and go look at lights. And when you were little, you would count, how many houses had lights. And then it's like suddenly we're in the 70s and 80s. We're like, okay, there's a lot of houses with lights, so we don't have to keep counting. But, we had an order of things. Christmas morning, you get up and you do the stockings first. And then always in your PJs. When we did decorate the tree, you guys, as you got old enough, you would start putting your ornaments on, and that was fun. And do you remember we had that nail? It was an ornament, but it was like a big nail, and it was a reminder of the nails that were in Jesus' hands and feet on the cross. And we would stand around the Christmas tree, and we would put that one on the tree first, and then we would pray that we would remember what Christmas is really all about, and not get all caught up in all the hoopla. And we would pray for our home to be a blessing to whoever would come in during this season. So, your dad and I still do that.
Yeah. One tradition I just remembered, you tried to make it a tradition as often as you could, was the Christmas Eve service, the 11 o'clock, so that when you left the service, it was, it's midnight Christmas. It's officially Christmas Day. Our church didn't always do that service growing up. So I remember going and on certain years, but not every year, just because they didn't always do it.
Right. That's right.
But one of the things that I always thought was cool about that service was, it starts at 11 o'clock. So it's already the next day in Israel. So whoever was giving the message that night would be like, how cool is it that at this exact moment, it's already Christmas in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem? Like, that's really cool. And I remember that.
That's awesome.
More than just the 11 o'clockness of it. It was always, okay, it's 11 here, but it's Christmas there.
That's true. Actually, I was looking online today just about traditions, and I found a really fun quote. It was from some Sunshine Retirement Village website. It just came up, but I thought it was really good. I just wanted to share it. They said, family traditions are how we connect with each other across generations. By sharing our favorite events, experiences, silly games, gifts, and songs with each other, we build bonds that stand the test of time and make our family experiences unique. Passing down family traditions strengthens those bonds. And I certainly hope that these traditions that we pass down, will at some point, maybe some of them you will choose to continue with your own family. And maybe you and Sarah do some of these already, traditions from her side and traditions from your side. So, but then that connects us with you.
Yeah. I think one of the things to me about traditions is like, we were talking about something similar before we started recording, but like, to me, a lot of what we did, it either felt like a checklist eventually, like when I was in college, it's like, okay, when are you going to be around for this? When are you going to be around for this? We got to do this. Like that started to feel like a checklist. But so much of it, to me, felt like the decision was made in the moment. It didn't feel like before, like we had to like start scheduling things. It felt like the decision was made in the moment. So it didn't even feel like a tradition so much as like we have the option of doing this or not. We have the option of going to see the lights or not. Is it too cold for us to stand out there for over an hour? Are we willing? Do we have that special parking spot at the church where we can go park? And then, like a lot of it felt situation dependent. So it didn't feel like we always did the exact same thing, which is what a lot of tradition feels like in my head, is we always do the same thing at the same time, that kind of thing. It felt like these are all things that our family does. So let's figure out the combination we're going to do this year. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's one of the things that makes it, interesting hearing you talk about tradition. I do these things to stay connected and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that those were things that you did like for the purpose of staying connected. I thought those were just things that we did because that's what we did. You know what I mean? So I think, not to rehash another podcast, but like the definition of tradition and how people look at it can mean a lot of different things.
Sure.
So I think making sure that everybody is on the same page about what's a tradition and why it's a tradition and what a tradition means to different people. Because I remember when I didn't want to watch a certain Christmas movie or something in college. Like I didn't want to come home just to watch like a 30-minute Winnie the Pooh movie or something like that. Or that's what it felt like. And Jess got a little bent out of shape over it because she was like, no, this is what we do. We always sit and we watch these movies. And I was like, I thought we did what we wanted to, and what we wanted to do in that moment was watch that movie. I didn't realize that it was like a checklist. And I think a lot of that is, growing up, when we would vacation, we would go to the same place and we would try and do all the same things. And they were fun for a while. And then eventually it became, okay, we're trying to schedule out our entire vacation to make sure we do all the things.
Well, yes, because we kept adding to the list as you guys got older, and that got harder and harder.
Year after year after year.
Yeah.
It got harder and harder and harder. And then it turned into one of those things where it's like, okay, why? If it's not fun, why is it on the list? You know what I mean? So, and that's
a lot of that was because I was going to say Jessica was the tradition of doing those things was so important to Jessica. And she's been a couple years younger than you. So when you were moving on to, I really don't need to do that. She was like, no, I still want to go to that certain park and I still need to eat at that certain restaurant. So I think, I thought that was interesting what you said. You didn't realize that they were traditions, but I know that, specifically around the holidays, they're things that your dad and I talked about. This is what we want to do for our family. With our family. And that was very intentional on our part to create memories and to bring a piece of the family that we came from into the family that we were creating. So
I know
that was
and then I think it was
intentional
it Christmas
for us.
Was it Christmas Eve? We always read the Christmas story from Luke.
It was actually between stockings and presents.
Between stockings and presents. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I remember all those years we would like do stockings and Jess would get all hyped up and I would get all hyped up and we'd be so excited. And then Dad would go pull out the Bible and we'd be like, oh my goodness, sir.
We should have
why
done
did
it
you
Christmas
choose
Eve.
now? And it didn't like connect that it was like the same time each time.
Oh yeah, you
know
guys
what I
would
mean?
get really frustrated.
when you're 8 and 6, it's whatever. When you're 10 and 8, it's like whatever. But it was like, dude, we just did this. We just did stockings. We just got this candy. I just got this cool little mini Lego set. I can see the presents sitting on the couch that are unwrapped because they were delivered from Santa. Like, what do you mean we're gonna stop and not open gifts for another 15 minutes now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, that was it's probably a really frustrating tradition. We should have moved that one around a little bit. So that's funny. But yeah, it's interesting. We talk about connecting generations with some traditions. I was remembering, my mom, when she would set the table, when I would go to Thanksgiving at my grandmother's house, we had these china plates and we had my great grandmother's stuff on the table and from both sides of the family. And they would talk about, oh, that candy dish is from, so-and-so, and this plate and this platter's from so-and-so. And so you're basically sitting around this table of memorabilia from previous generations. And so my mom still will use, china and glasses from her mom and her grandmother, or a nut bowl or something. And that kind of connects her to them and it brings back memories for her. But I really don't have any of those kinds of things. Either they haven't been passed down to me, or I just don't have those. So what mine is more the menu and the events of the day. So, we've held on to, like we just talked about, the parade, and then we have breakfast this time, and then we kind of chill, and then we get dressed, and then we have Thanksgiving in the afternoon, and we do the Plaza Lights or a movie in the evening. So it really was more kind of the schedule of the day, as opposed to something tangible that you would hold and say, oh, this is great grandmother's platter. We're going to use this for the turkey because we use this for the turkey every year. But it would be interesting to see if at some point, something that I will be really interested to see, as you guys are now couples, what traditions you are using. I mean, you're still coming over for Thanksgiving to our house. At some point, you may not. You may decide to do Thanksgiving someplace else, or in your own home and with your own family. So it'll be interesting to see what traditions you want to carry on into your life with Sarah. So, are there traditions that you think would be easy to let go of? And no, you won't kill me if you name some of them.
Well,
but
the movies is one of the easy things. Partially because I don't have them. I don't have the movies. I would have to go either buy the movie or find it online somewhere. I mean, where am I going to find Robert Downey Jr. as like a 23-year-old kid in Mr. Willoughby's Christmas Tree with Kermit the Frog? I have no idea. I don't think we even actually had that movie. I think we had like a recording off of a VHS from when it played on TV at one point.
We did. We recorded it on a VHS.
Yeah, I think we had to find it on YouTube one year to watch it at some point. So like maybe I could watch it on YouTube. But like part of the tradition was watching the same commercials every year that were recorded onto that tape.
Sure.
Because we recorded it off TV. So that was part of the tradition, was watching those same older and older and older advertisements. So I think the movies is one that's easy to get to drop. Just again, I don't have it. Like,
right.
If I wanted, it would take more planning than I'm used to uphold that tradition. I'd either have to go find the movie at Half Price Books, download it off the internet, something like that, to have it available so that when it was like, oh, let's watch that movie, we could just do that, rather than, no, we didn't watch that movie. Well, how would we watch that movie? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think
that makes sense.
I think the Christmas movies, probably the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I don't keep up with a lot of pop culture the way that your mother and you and Jess, not that you're like addicted to TV by any means, like far from it, but just like knowing who musicians are, who fun brands are, like
I don't know a lot of the musicians that are in that parade. I watch the Rockettes. I watch a band or two. I think it's just the whole. To me, it's a tradition from my family. So it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with. Actually, I love seeing scenes of New York. I love seeing the buildings, because I love New York City. So I love seeing the picture. I love seeing the buildings and the scenes of New York City. But I don't know a lot of balloons. Yes, but I don't know a lot of the bands that are, on the floats either. So I'm kind of behind on that part. But that is one tradition I hold on to just because it was a tradition.
So that would probably be one that I let go of just because. Let go of. Well, I didn't hardly watch it in the first place. Remember, I slept through most of the parade.
I know.
That's
true.
I wasn't hardly even holding on to it at 14.
Yeah, no. You weren't. You totally weren't.
I was sleeping in. I still remember, there was some viral Facebook post back before viral actually was a thing. I'm only a morning person on 2 days a year, my birthday and Christmas. And I always responded, I'm not even a morning person on Christmas. No, the presents will still be there an hour later. Jessica was always the one that was chomping at the bit, like, all right, let's go.
I think maybe there's just 1 or 2 years that you were up early. Other than that, your dad and I would look at each other and be like, how are we the only parents that don't have kids banging down their door at 6 o'clock in the morning? We felt so lucky that we didn't ever have to deal with that. We were always like, we would get up, set up the camera, make coffee, and then we'd go wake you guys up. Be like, okay, it's Christmas, get up.
Hey, so come look at this stuff I got you. It's really cool. I promise. I want to see the look on your face. Now, come on.
We're ready now. So
I think that's probably why, at least for me, the whole stopping to read Christmas, the story of Christmas in the middle was like, you woke me up. You gave me some gifts, and now you press pause. Why?
Right.
I think, and again, when I was 15 years old or whatever, I was only half awake by then. So that's probably part of it. Like I wasn't connecting all the dots just yet.
True. And we've been talking a lot about, the traditions that are around the secular parts of Christmas. But, we participated in whatever, like you said, Christmas Eve service, but there was always something going on throughout the whole season that was something at church. I mean, we went to, we made ornaments, or we went to an Advent thing. Jessica was in several Christmas musicals. You guys were doing stuff with the youth group. And so there really weren't traditions that were every single year the same as far as the parts that dealt with our faith. But there were things happening every year that were about the faith aspect of Christmas. So, our traditions really weren't built around lighting a candle or saying a certain prayer, but we were active in church doing those things. Whatever the church was doing, we were doing. So it's interesting to me that most of the traditions that we're talking about really have to do with the stuff that's just the fun stuff, just the secular side of
I think
Christmas.
It's similar. I think it's similar to my point from earlier about like the mall and the vibes around Christmas. Churches decorate differently at Christmas time.
Yeah.
And being around all of that kind of created that sense of it's Christmas, not just the candles that were lit. Was it I'm blanking on it right now. The candles that the 5 weeks
Advent
leading
candle.
up to Christmas.
Yeah, Advent candles, Advent candles. Yeah.
So, you've got some traditions are just, something you do, and some are just, oh, that's what we're doing this year. You worked at the church for several years when I was growing up. So we were up there a lot just because you were working, because Christmas is just the craziest time for churches.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, the spontaneous Christmas pageant. Remember that?
Oh,
where you could wear whatever you wanted to. You could decide when you got there if you were going to be a shepherd or a king or an angel.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember doing that? We did that for a number of years.
Vaguely. Oh, my gosh. You remember progressive dinners as a youth group?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. A progressive dinner.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually progressive. We just went to somebody's house instead because there were too many people to have very many moving pieces. You couldn't do like one piece here, one piece there, because the people that volunteered were too spread out. So it was basically going to have a dinner at a friend's house with a bunch of other people wearing nice Christmas clothes as a high schooler.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Hey, before we run out of time, so I was looking at some research online just about how different generations deal with Christmas and what their traditions are. And this one was specifically around Thanksgiving, but I think it would probably be the same for Christmas. And I wanted to point out, so it said that most of the generations were pretty much the same about, what foods they eat and watching certain shows. But I was really impressed. So millennials had a higher percentage that were interested in decorating their home, which I thought was interesting, but also volunteering or donating food. The millennials were the highest generation from Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and Boomer. Millennials were the highest generation that wanted to do something kind of mission-oriented, volunteering or donating food, or doing some kind of a run or walk, like a turkey trot or something. And you know what? That actually fits because in other research that I've done about millennials, you are a very missional generation. So, as much flack as millennials get about, being self-absorbed, you're actually, in a lot of research from different groups, you're actually the generation that's saying, this can't be all about me. There needs to be a deeper meaning to this piece, whether it's Christmas or Thanksgiving or just life in general. You want to have some kind of missional aspect to your life. And so, hats off to you, millennial, because I think that's very true. And I've seen that. Maybe it's because you had great Gen X parents. No,
well,
I think that's great.
I would say some of it's that, but I would also say like the millennial generation was the first one that had a lot of like feel good television. Oh, that episode ended with a nice theme and a nice message and stuff. And a lot of it centered around, it was always the grump in the friend group or whatever that was always like, I don't want to serve at a soup kitchen. It's 2 hours. Come on. I don't want to do it. And they get dragged there or they feel guilty about it and they run into their long lost father or something like that. And they're just like, you know what? This was a good idea. We were fed that every year, at least a couple of episodes of television, a movie or two, like Hallmark Christmas, like all that sort of stuff had a lot of focus on how it wasn't terrible to do and it was fun to do. You know what I mean? I don't know that a lot of television and movies and stuff before then had that kind of context added to it.
No, maybe not. Yeah.
And as a millennial, millennials watch more TV than Gen X and Gen Z probably, but Gen Z's watching more stuff on their phone. You know what I mean? Like we've all got like the quote unquote generational vice, if you will, that's like specific to us. I get the feeling that Gen Z is probably going to eventually, Gen Alpha's there, but like we're kind of in this short window of Gen Z. I get the feeling that Gen Z is probably going to have specific things to them start really formulating here over the next couple of years related to holidays. And frankly, some of it is just that they're depressed. That's a big thing around the holidays is, I personally joke about it, because if I don't joke, I think about it too much. Sometimes I get the SAD around Christmas time.
Oh yeah,
seasonal affective depression, SAD. I get the SAD. You know what I mean? And I think that Gen Z probably has that worse than millennials, because Gen Z doesn't necessarily have as many, just as a generation, as a big fat painting them all with the same brush, total general stereotype. I think they probably have fewer fond memories of holidays growing up, statistically speaking, than millennials. More Gen Z have divorced parents than millennials did. You know what I mean?
Right.
More Gen Z are doing the holiday shuffle from mom's house to dad's house. More Gen Z are missing more grandparents than millennials. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As more and more Gen Z, well, as more and more people get older to do things in life, they're waiting till they're older to get married, which means they're waiting till they're older to have children, which, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
There's fewer grandparents around by the time a lot of these people are growing up. Okay. So there's not necessarily that tradition to anchor something to. You're able to sit there and say, oh, this was the cranberry dish that such and such always used.
Or great-grandparents.
Or great-grandparents. I remember some from my great-grandmother. I don't remember anything from her husband, though. I don't remember anything from my other great-grandparent.
Right.
I've got these vague impressions of memories, and I don't know if it's a memory I made up based on pictures that I've seen in photo albums. There's another very old-fashioned phrase, traditional phrase. Pictures that I've seen in photo albums necessarily.
Well, my dad's, your grandparents on your grandfather's side were gone before you were born. Both of them.
Yeah.
So you didn't have anything there, at all. But I do remember my great-grandmother, and I remember my parents talking about great-grandmothers and great-aunts and uncles. And but yeah, you're right. The way that how young people were getting married and starting families in previous generations probably had a big piece to do with that. I do think millennials were the first generation, because of social media, because of the computer, because of your phones. The millennial generation is very aware, more so than Gen X and boomers. You were aware of the world around you and what was going on because you had access to it. And so I think you were able to see areas of need, and then you wanted to respond to them. So, okay, well, before we,
That's probably true. I mean, frankly, on the subject of a turkey trot, I never know a turkey trot is happening until my friends are posting about it on Instagram. It is so far from a traditional. It is so far from a traditional wheelhouse for me. Nope, I got no idea.
Yeah.
The only time I ever kept track of it was when I worked for 6 years at a law firm, and my boss wanted to sign up for any run he could.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay, so he signed up for a 10K on Thanksgiving morning, because that was a guarantee. He would always be guaranteed to be in town then, and so he could always bank on, I can at least do that run, or I can do that marathon, because I know where I'm going to be. I'm not going to be away at a trial. No judge is going to have me working until the day before. No, the judge wants to be home with his family too, or her family too. They're not going to schedule. So that was one run that he always did. He always signed up for, because I had to go get his race packet a lot of the time. So that was one thing that is probably different between the generations too, is just the run walk thing.
Yeah, that wasn't even anything that we talked about. Okay, well, before
it's
we
actually
close,
said real quick. It's actually said in millennial circles, one of the most important things to do when you're dating somebody is find out, are they a sleep-in on Thanksgiving morning or a turkey trot family? What are you getting involved in? Because if it's a turkey trot family, that might be a make or break thing. Because if it's a family tradition to do the turkey trot, oh my goodness,
you
don't
up.
want to do that. You know what I mean? You're getting
Yeah.
up, you're participating, because that's a family thing.
Yeah.
And if you're already from a turkey trot family, great, it works out. But if you're not from a turkey trot family and you're dating a turkey trot person, oh boy, that's a thing.
That's a thing. Well, tell me real quickly, Peter, what is a tradition that you have you and Sarah, you haven't been married but a year and a half, but for your first Thanksgiving and Christmas, did you talk about, here's a tradition that I want to do from my family and I want to keep it going? Just real quick.
Not specifically.
Maybe in the future you will.
Yeah, maybe in the future we'll have those conversations when life looks a little bit different. Just because part of the problem is I'm not allowed to take any time off officially in the month of November or December at my current job. So we can't go on a trip. Like earlier this year, Sarah was like sending me like Christmas in New York stuff, and I was like, not in this job. It's never, they're never going to let me do that. I would have to call out sick and fake it every morning for a week. It's not going to happen.
And then not post any pictures or anything. Yeah.
And not post any pictures. Go to New York at the most expensive time, like, whatever, like money aside, it's never going to fly in my current role. In a different role, I could totally do it.
Yeah.
Different role, same company, totally possible. Current role, not going to happen. It's just not. So,
well, it'll be interesting to see you guys.
Yeah.
What traditions mean a lot. I always, when Josh joined the family and then when Sarah joined the family, I did ask both of them, is there some kind of food that you have always had as part of your holiday traditions that you would like to recreate? Whether it's cinnamon rolls, because I think you guys do cinnamon rolls. Sarah had done that with her family.
Don't tell her I've already ordered the gluten-free cinnamon rolls for pickup the day before, so she doesn't know I've done that. So that's turning into a tradition. There's a specific local gluten-free bakery here in town where you can pre-order take and bake goods for holidays. So I did that last year. I'm doing it again this year.
So that's a tradition that you guys are creating.
Yeah. So we've got that. One of the things, part of it is Sarah's dad is a first responder. So she spent a lot of her holidays growing up at a firehouse because he was working then. So a lot of her traditions were contingent on who decided to deep fry a turkey that day and did they know what they were doing? You know what I mean? So I think as we settle in a little bit more and we can start looking outwards, because I was living in a new place last year and we're both living in a new place this year. So I think when we have like a house and we're kind of consistently doing things in the same place and in the same way every year, we'll be able to settle into some more traditions a little bit easier.
That makes sense. Well, I just want to close with just a reminder that, we talk about traditions and, things that we do, but, I think we do that because God loves for us to remember. I think we create traditions because God has created traditions since the beginning of time. So just think about, God's the one that put the rainbow in the sky as a symbol that he would never flood the earth again. And so every time it's like God's tradition that we can see a rainbow in the sky. He instituted the Israelites remembering the Passover meal every single year to remember him bringing them out of slavery in Egypt. And to this day, thousands of years later, people still eat the Passover meal. That is a tradition. And Jesus started communion. And so you can look at communion as a tradition. It's a food, it's a meal, it's a way to remember. It's a sacred act that he told people to do this in remembrance of him as often as they were together. So, God's kind of the one that started this whole tradition thing. And we just carry it on in fun ways with whether it's a movie or cinnamon rolls or, doing Christmas presents, Christmas Eve or Christmas morning. But that whole need to remember and to repeat something generations, I think that's biblical. I think God did that, and I think we do that because it does connect us all down the line of generations, the traditions that we keep going and that we even just talk about, that connects us to the generation before and the generation behind us. So, as we close out this last podcast for the year, our hope is that whatever traditions you celebrate this season will help you remember the people and events that are important to your family and to your faith. We encourage you to take some time to share with your families about the traditions that mean a lot to you and why. And maybe talk about starting some new generations or some new traditions for the generations to come. So, all our best and God's blessings to everyone as we close out 2024. We will be back in January with the Let's Talk podcast to get the generations talking. So, from Peter and myself, everybody, we wish you a very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in 2025.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
The views expressed in this podcast are personal opinions and do not reflect those of any organization. The speakers are not licensed therapists, and their insights are based on their own experiences. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to seek qualified professionals for specific guidance. And by accessing this podcast, you agree that the individuals speaking in this podcast are not liable for any outcomes or consequences that may arise as a result.